I'm going to start the show tonight with some hot seat talk because there's a lot of rumblings, a lot of whispers out there. You take the old plastic cup, you put your ear to the ground, and you're hearing some things. You're hearing some things about Hugh and Auburn. That's where I'm going to start. It feels like the job is on the line Saturday. That's what it feels like to me. There are some people around the program who feel that way. Now, I want to stress that there's a lot of fluidity to this stuff with many of these coaching searches. It's not always as cut and dry as if this happens, then that will happen. It's just not paint by numbers. A lot of times it is spaghetti plotted. And so when you have 15 different mouths in the room with 15 different opinions and thoughts on things, aka when it's a major college football job we're talking about, then that's the way it can be sometimes. I was looking at Justin Hokanson, friend of the program, over at auburnsports.com today, and he was talking about what would go into this. And firstly, they're 3-4, so they could just win out and go 8-4, and it's a moot point. They could also lose Saturday, and Hugh Freeze could be out of a job, and it may not even take until the end of the season. And I happen to lean towards that happening, not rooting for it, happen to lean towards that happening as just a matter of what's most likely. But what Hokanson mentioned and what needs to be restated over and over and over again is it's one thing to think that in the abstract. Okay, drill down on the specifics, because this is where I think the Auburn situation is at right now. Not everyone who needs to be on board with making a move is on board. And then if they're on board with the general principle of making a move, well, then they need to be on board with paying the buyout. And to be on board with paying the buyout, they need to have a follow-up plan. You don't just go and fire somebody and then say, well, now what? Nope, can't do that. The now what already has to be figured out before the firing part gets figured out, because you don't just get to fire someone and say, thanks, turn in your keys before you leave. You got to pay them tens of millions of dollars. So you better have a good plan. Ideally, you have a plan that would upgrade you from your previous situation. Now, I know if you're new to college football or you've been watching it your whole life, this sounds commonsensical. It is. It's not always inside these athletic departments. Let's just remember that. So they need alignment to make the move. Nothing aligns people behind paying a lot of money to get rid of someone like losing football games. So if that happens Saturday against Arkansas, I think you're going to see those wheels in motion. And then I think you'll probably hear John Summerall's name. You may hear James Franklin's name mentioned there. I happen to lean John Summerall. Like, I've viewed that as the favorite to get that job if it comes open. And until proven otherwise, that's the name I'm going to go with. But it's not the only name involved. And I think part of the dilemma that they may have there actually is there are more than a few names involved in the decision-making process that have more than just one or two names themselves that they want as forefront of the coaching search. And then you got to figure out how the search is going to happen. So yeah, that's where I think the Hugh Freeze situation is right now. Win, and it silences all of this. Lose Saturday, and I think it's actually in motion, and I think it's going to happen. And candidly, I thought that may be the situation against Missouri. But you do need to remember, like, Auburn has had two games, the Oklahoma game and the Georgia game, where a lot of their people look and say, officials cost us those games. We were good enough to win them. Officials cost us those games. Well, if you were to flip those, they're a 5-2 team. I know that's not the way football works, but there's a big difference in what's happening, with Florida State, where it's just totally dead on arrival, versus Auburn was competitive against Oklahoma. They were competitive against A&M. They were competitive against Georgia. They were competitive against, these are all competitive games. They haven't mailed the season in. But at some point, you may run out of gas and it may get mailed in. And if that's Saturday, then I think we know what's going to happen. Next up, what's the latest with Mike Norvell at Florida State? I know they put out the statement yesterday. I don't care. I still think they're going to move on from him. I just don't think they're moving on from him this week. And as of 72 hours ago, I thought it may even be this week. So we're talking semantics here. I think it's going to happen. I think you've got another situation, which obviously you can't have, and that is a second year in a row, the team just looks dead. And I promise you, if you weren't up late enough to watch the Stanford game, it was really, really tough to watch. So and then there are reports around the team and around the program about players just kind of being ambivalent, just kind of being nonchalant about it. Well, that's because they've tapped out. And they've tapped out because they're not really Florida State players. They're really mercenaries. If we just cut right to it, that's been the problem there. If we cut right to why there's no real foreseeable pulling up of the nose in the future, it's because their talent profile is not rooted in high school recruiting. It's just, all right, we got through last year. Let's go get a new crop of players out of the portal for this year. That doesn't work. That's not sustainable. So it is going to cost a ton of money to buy him out. So copy paste what I just said about Auburn. That's kind of what you hear around Florida State right now is, do we have a plan? Do we have an action plan? And there's another question that a lot of people who are going to write those checks want to know before they write the check, and that is, who do we know we're going to be able to get? And oftentimes that question's not able to be answered. And it's very uncomfortable to write checks for tens of millions of dollars on the chance that you might get the guy you want. And then the question is, well, who's the guy they want? Look, the question around Florida State, and Florida really, since it's open right now too, but the question around Florida State, if it comes open, is who can recruit the state of Florida? How about that? You want to talk about the characteristics that you need, and you want to talk about what needs to be proven. Hey, most of the guys whose names are going to be involved are good football coaches. They'd be good clinicians. They can really chalk you to death. They can call plays if that's what you need them to do. They can hire good coordinators. Your name wouldn't be in the running if you couldn't do that. Who can stack recruiting classes where they turn the transfer portal from a lifeline to just a supplement tool, maybe a luxury, maybe some cherries on top of the roster here and there, like the other big boys do? Hey, once you find someone who can do that, I'll trust that they can coach them up plenty good enough when they get there. So that's the candidate pool at Florida State. What about LSU? Hey, wait just a second. I appreciate you guys watching. Most of you are subscribed. If you're not, please do so. It's free. It helps us keep the show free, and that's how we do college football year-round. All right, back to the video. Different story here because LSU still got all their goals in front of them. They're a 5-2 team right now. A 2-loss team won the national title last year. Now, a lot of you are laughing when I say that because the implication would be that LSU's got to win out, and you don't think they're going to beat A&M and Alabama and Arkansas and Oklahoma. I don't either, but they could. So we don't, we're not in the business of firing guys who we think are probably going to lose some games if they're 5-2 right now, and we got a lot of money sunk into them, and that's Brian Kelly. So I don't think we're there yet, but this is the job I hinted at in the preseason. Remember, there was one of them I was talking about where I said, some of these places, like Auburn, Hugh Freeze was on the hot seat. Sam Pittman was on the hot seat. A lot of these guys, Billy Napier, like a lot of these guys who have since lost their jobs or maybe on the way to losing their jobs, their names were already being thrown around. Brian Kelly's wasn't, but I had a fairly strong feeling that it could go from not on the hot seat at all to fired in the span of one season. I still believe that. We've actually trended a lot more towards that. But they're not close to firing him yet. What they are close to doing is demanding that he make some changes internally, and I would especially apply that to if they struggle again offensively Saturday at home, at night, against A&M, then he's going to have to change things offensively on his staff. And I don't really know that that's much more than rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic at that point, but I think he'll be asked to do that. I think it will be demanded of him. He's got every right to say no. He is the head coach. What happens if that comes to pass? But you got to understand, if you're around LSU, you know what I'm saying is true. If you're not around LSU, if you're a Minnesota fan, congrats again on the Nebraska game. But if you're a Minnesota fan and you're just watching this from several states away, Brian Kelly doesn't have much equity built up. Let me rephrase. Brian Kelly has no equity left with the LSU fan base. This is the byproduct of coming into Louisiana and not embracing Louisiana. Longtime viewers of the show will know, I sound like I'm reading off a prompter, but if you've watched the show for a long time, you will know that I've kept mentioning that. There's a reason I've kept mentioning that. It matters. It matters anywhere you go. Some places it matters more than others. And LSU, it matters more than others. There's a very, very unique sense of pride that people take there from understanding what makes Louisiana State different and what makes coaching there different and what makes understanding that state and embracing it different than coaching at Louisville or somewhere like that. No knock on Louisville. Brian Kelly never embraced that. Now, the catch to that was if he came in there and won doing it his way, No one was going to speak publicly. They may whisper behind the scenes. They were never going to speak publicly about it. However, the moment he did not win, the volume was going to get turned up on that. And the volume is being turned up on it. And Brian Kelly never built any goodwill with the people down there. He had never really embraced Louisiana at all. Thought that he could do it the same way there that he did it at Notre Dame. And some people get competitively stubborn enough to think that way. Hey, the formula for success is the formula for success. And I could apply it just as certainly at Oregon as I could at Notre Dame, as I could at Arizona, as I could at LSU. Well, in some ways that's true. You know, you block and tackle the same way here as you do there, but that's not what college football really is. That's not what college football is at all. So Brian Kelly's found that out down there, and they're going to want changes. A lot of the fan base wants a change at the top, but at the very least internally, they're going to want changes offensively, structurally, and I got to say, I still think it may trend towards ending poorly, but it's a big check to write. And they don't have a university president there right now, so it's a very politically complicated matter. But winning football games takes care of it all. You beat A&M Saturday, you're 6-2, you go into the bye week, and then you're going into Tuscaloosa with everything to play for. So again, this conversation could be muted very quickly, but it could also be amplified very quickly. So we're really on a razor's edge right now, I would say, with the LSU job. The Wisconsin job fascinates me. So Wisconsin hired Luke Fickell, and most people, myself included, thought it was a brilliant hire. That I thought that Wisconsin had really gotten themselves serious about winning in the Big Ten, and it has not worked. And I don't think it's failed to work because Fickell's not a good coach. I actually think Luke Fickell's a really good football coach. I think he hired poorly out of the gate, and he's paying the price for that right now. And it is an identityless team 3 years in, and it's not going to fix itself overnight. So the question you have to ask yourself is, well, do we just want to cut bait, fire him, and start over? Or do we believe in the hire we made, and are we willing to accept that he himself made some poor hiring decisions, but we're going to give him a chance to sort of start over? It's basically the shock panel approach. Do we pay the money to buy a guy out, or do we rub the panels together, clear, hit him on the chest, resurrect him one more time, bring him back to life, and then take the money we would have paid him for the buyout and infuse it into NIL, a.k.a. what Florida did last year. It did not work out for Florida. They still ended up firing Napier. Remains to be seen what would happen if Wisconsin chose to do this, but it does look like that may be the route they want to go right now. Again, if they get blown out 59-3 at Oregon Saturday, and then Washington comes and hits them over the head at home, maybe that changes the mood. So that's where we are on the hot seat front right now. I think the Wisconsin job's interesting because I go back to this. I go back to this generic mentality when people try and describe jobs. And they're always describing jobs through, like I just said, a very generic lens. How good is the Wisconsin job? Well, it's not as good as job A, but it's better than job B. You don't know because you're not the specific candidate. There are specific candidates out there, like Kenny Dillingham views Arizona State infinitely above and beyond that which the normal person would. Clark Lee views Vanderbilt way above and beyond in terms of job quality what most people would. That doesn't mean anyone else would feel that way, but it doesn't matter because they got the right guys to feel that way about their programs. Well, what if there's someone out there that, for whatever reason, has Wisconsin according to their personal interest as a top 5 job? You don't know that that doesn't exist. In fact, I would suggest it may very well exist out there. So you can't know what the candidate pool is because you can't really know that everyone views the jobs the exact same way, is all I'm saying. And all you need is one. Like they didn't need 15 Kenny Dillinghams at Arizona State. They didn't need 15 Clarks at Vandy. They needed one. And each of those found them. So maybe Luke Fickell still is that guy. Or if he's not, maybe there is a random other candidate out there that is that guy, and remains to be seen. Remains to be seen. Those four words are pretty evergreen this time of year.